Hello and welcome to the episode number 5 of a series called The Ramblings of a Dead Madman. Can you imagine the predicament I am in? If so, then you know the urgency, because there are only about a couple of dozen ears plugged to my phone line. Other problems. One is my email connection is being tampered with. This was for him, but the info should be the same for you. You do want to know the truth, don't you? I originally started writing this to get Sheen's attention because of his frustration to get answers. Charlie Sheen, in capital letters. I was just reading in the Global Outlook magazine about your frustration with 9/11. You have a lot of questions about it, and so do millions. However, if you want answers, then this becomes a service, and if you and your acting friends want answers, and whoever else wants to donate money towards the reward, I can supply them. The cost of the reward should be for a token $29 million. Just ask the Muslims what this has cost them. How much will each pay for their dignity back? Even a few dollars each would amount to much more than this reward. Why this amount? Well, this is precisely what the FBI owes me. To start with is the answer to the sniper case in Washington a few years ago. This is the tip that did it. Then there is another case that I also solved, however this one is yet more sensitive, and they have let me know that I would be delimbed if I spoke, so I will be silent. But I should still be paid for it. Sniper's tip. I just saw the movie Red Dragon, and I believe this sniper character is paralleling the movie. Anyhow, if you used plastic, then there would be a record of it. Now that you know this, if some of you go see the movie yourselves, you should come to the same conclusion. Your profilers can fill you in on the rest about these characters. I sent a tip to the FBI web tips page almost identical to this on October 20th of 2002 at 6:58 p.m. You may notice that I did not even tell them what clue that was, but I will tell all when this reward is paid. I would like to claim the reward for the sniper incidents in Washington 2 months ago. I believe I gave you the best and most direct way to find these culprits. Couldn't pick up the last drop. There were too many uncertainties and problems related to it, so I have started a new account. So you can put it here, at CIBC, Jane Shepherd branch. I really thought you wanted to make a big splash in handing out the reward, but I realize now that you just want this to go away. Okay, this would sure make a nice Christmas present. Being just a normal Ed, I was not experienced at picking up payment drop. In other words, I was simply scared shitless of any possible outcome. What if it was a setup? Just couldn't do it. So I set this account hoping the FBI would use it instead of those dangerously dreaded drops. The moment this new information airs in the US, the Bushy government ends. My new email is... ... Sorry if you get this information twice. It is simply so that everyone knows who is getting this added info. I have not received any reply from the UN and agencies, so I am taking this to the world leaders that I was able to find on the internet in this short period of time. The seed planted by the U.S. government for 9/11 actually started many years before, and the first sign was the underground parking lot bombing of one of the towers that was performed by the FBI. This act was blamed on Osama bin Laden to create reason for invasion later. Also, a couple of years later, another bombing was carried out at Oklahoma. This accomplished at least two things: create an idea of homemade terrorists and get rid of a few officials that would not go along with the next phase, now known as 9/11. Also, to introduce fear into the population to look to the government for protection from these not existing ghostly terrorists, so that the government could control everyone without question. The first reason for 9/11 was to control Afghanistan, so that a large gas pipeline could cross it so that America could have really cheap gas. This pipeline was started just a few weeks after landing and controlling the country. One would think such a large government project to take at least a couple of years of planning before starting. There was never any news of this project except one documentary that same year, which showed exactly from where to where. The second reason was to embolden the armed forces after the Americans wiped out the Taliban or Al-Qaeda army. What army? Create fear on those countries that would not comply with U.S. demands. The third reason was to take over Iraq. From here, the U.S. would be intimidating all countries in that area which were not already under their control. And yes, free oil. Before 9/11, the only terrorists were just CIA agents. Update! Not just before 9/11, but during, and forever it appears to be. CIA terrorists agents. Did you notice that the U.S. Senate did not allow Dubai to take control of its ports? This is because the Senate knows that Dubai is also implicated in 9/11. So why haven't the Senate stopped the action in Iraq? Simply because it just doesn't look good for their image in world power control. Total dominance. Most recent execution of this prejudice was right here in Toronto, with these 17 Muslims being convolutedly set up. The problem is that I had found some evidence that in fact proves that the planes hitting the towers were empty of people. Remote controlled instead, and full of fuel. This of course means that no Muslims or anybody else could be blamed except for the FBI, which planned and executed it. I sent a much longer and more detailed email to a film producer. They in turn complained to some agencies and created all kinds of problems for the Bush administration. May 14th, 2016. Because there are many secret ears plugged to my phone line also, immediately our Prime Minister got the message and was alerted to these complications. The next morning it was on television that a special meeting on the Afghanistan mission was scheduled. Bush found out about the meeting. I'm certain he intimidated Canada's Premier Harper in many different ways. The Premier was comforted later though because he received an honorary handshake from the Down Under President. The situation only aggravated me more than before, because the FBI does owe me $29 million. Soon after, 17 or more Muslims in Toronto were charged with terrorism. This was an obvious smokescreen. Only to take away attention from the problem that I had created by sending that most Bush-incriminating letter to that producer. The population looks to the Premier for leadership and protection, but sometimes an individual has to stand up and fix things because of obvious political circumstances. I could not keep silent anymore. The terrorist Bush administration must be stopped. I am taking this cause to the world. As you can see from these email addresses, these are nearly all world leaders and offices. To those that must keep plugged to my telephone line, you need to know that I was also aware of that international dormitory that was set ablaze and then locked up, so that no one could escape. 120 students died. A few years ago, and all the other times in between, this was done in retaliation because their cooperatives, CIA, here in Toronto, didn't get their way in trying to evaporate me. I had just asked to get paid. The idea to enslave the world, to provide cheap or free goods for their needs, started back in the 60s, maybe earlier. I forgot exactly. As far as I have noticed, when they destroyed Panama's excellent and stable government because the U.S. wanted cheap bananas, yes, this really happened. This is all done in the pretense of spreading democracy, when the fact is the U.S. installs puppet rulers where it controls countries, so that it can acquire whatever it wants, whenever.